He was the last person you'd ever expect to vanish, and definitely not in broad daylight on a sunny day in the middle of a lake. On June 15th, 2024, Wesley Dopkins, a 43-year-old man from Minnesota, went kayaking in the morning with a friend. The trip began like it had hundreds of times before, peaceful, safe, full of excitement. But just a few hours later, Lake Jackson fell eerily silent, and Wesley never came back. There was no call for help, no screams, no signs of a struggle. Just a dry bag, a single paddle, and his kayak, floating quietly on the water, as if nothing had ever happened. So where was Wesley? Search crews brought in helicopters, boats, even cadaver dogs, but nothing turned up. His disappearance led many to believe that Lake Jackson isn't just a place on the map. It's a body of water hiding secrets nearly 430 feet deep. And it wouldn't be until over a year later that the first answers would finally rise, from the coldest, darkest depths of the lake. Wesley Dopkins wasn't the kind of person you'd ever expect to see in the headlines. He wasn't a thrill seeker. He didn't chase adrenaline. He was the kind of guy you'd trust with your house keys. The one you'd call if your car broke down in the middle of the night. Quiet, steady, a man whose heart beat for nature and the people around him. Born and raised in St. Paul, Minnesota, Wesley was a true son of the North. He loved the snow, the woods, and most of all, the lakes and rivers. Ever since he was a boy, his grandfather had taught him how to paddle, how to read the wind, how to watch the water, and know where it ran deep, and where it could turn dangerous. For Wesley, the lake wasn't just a place to unwind. It was sacred, a space for silence, for connection. Friends describe him as someone with a quiet warmth. He could sit for hours in stillness, just watching the water. But if you needed help, he'd be the first one there and the last one to leave. He lived a low-profile life, steady job, no social media presence, no drama, no enemies. And maybe that's why his disappearance hit the community like such a strange, sudden blow. Why Wesley? He had no known enemies, no debts, no family feuds. He was a healthy, grounded man in his 40s who loved the outdoors and always planned ahead. This trip was no different. The kayaking adventure at Grand Teton had been planned for over a week. 2 friends, 2 boats, snacks, camping gear. But there was one mistake, just one life jacket. That morning, June 15th, 2024, the sky was spotless. The weather, perfect. Light breeze, clear sunlight. Jackson Lake lay flat like glass, mirroring the towering Tetons in the distance. To Wesley, it was the ideal day for a paddle. He and his close friend, a person he'd gone on countless trips with, set out from Elk Island, heading toward Waterfalls Canyon. 2 men, 2 kayaks, gliding gently over the cold water. Neither of them brought a phone. They wanted a full digital detox. No emails, no texts, just the sound of paddles and wind. But there was one unusual thing. Only one life jacket. They knew it, but figured it'd be fine. They'd done this many times. This part of the lake was familiar. Wesley handed the jacket to his friend. "You wear it," he said. "I'm good." A simple sentence, a kind gesture, a small act of selflessness. But maybe that was the moment everything changed. By late morning, the 2 were paddling with some distance between them. His friend looked back, and Wesley was gone. At first, he thought Wesley had just veered off course or stopped to rest. But minutes passed. Then 10. Then 30. The silence began to feel heavy. His friend searched frantically around the area, but saw nothing except shimmering water and the eerie stillness of a vast mountain lake. Near Moose Island, he spotted Wesley's kayak, folded inward. The paddle floated nearby. A dry bag bobbed on the surface, still zipped with personal items, keys, and ID inside. But Wesley was gone. No splash, no struggle, no cry for help. It was as if the lake had quietly opened, taken him in, and closed without a trace. And that was when the search began. A search that would last over a year, through freezing waters, through doubt, through moments of hope, and finally, to a truth deeper than anyone had imagined. The moment Wesley's friend realized he wasn't coming back, no one knew it was the beginning of a search that would stretch across hundreds of days. He was confused, panicked, but tried to stay calm. A light wind began to stir. The water, once a perfect mirror of the blue sky, now felt like an invisible veil, hiding whatever lay beneath. He called out Wesley's name, no answer. He paddled back toward the spot where they'd split up. Nothing, except the rhythmic sound of his paddle hitting water. Wesley's kayak was found first, folded, gently drifting, no sign of damage. His paddle was nearby, also floating. A dry bag had drifted a few meters away, still sealed, still intact. Inside were his wallet, ID, and car keys, everything perfectly in place. No blood, no signs of a struggle. No, Wesley. Around 3 p.m., his friend called Grand Teton National Park Rangers. It took less than an hour for the first response team to arrive on scene. And then, the search began. Rescue boats, sonar equipment, scent tracking dogs. A helicopter circled the area above Moose Island, the last place Wesley had been seen. Divers entered the water. Cold, dark, murky, and empty. A few days later, the search expanded. They studied underwater currents, some strong enough to carry a body far away in minutes. They checked for signs along the shore. Nothing. They questioned people in the area. No one had seen or heard a thing. Not even a cry for help. Wesley's family flew in from Minnesota that very night. They brought photos, handed out flyers, pleaded with the media to spread the word. Each morning, they stood by the lake's edge, staring at the water, hoping something, anything, would rise to the surface. But the water stayed still. The question echoed through everyone's mind, where is he? And slowly, quietly, with a kind of fear no one wanted to admit, another question began to take hold. Could he be gone? After 3 days with no trace, the mood at Grand Teton turned heavy. The search teams didn't give up, but even they began to admit this was one of the most difficult cases they'd ever faced. Jackson Lake spans over 15 square miles and drops to more than 400 feet deep, around 130 meters. Below the surface lies a pitch-black maze of underwater currents and treacherous terrain. No one knew for sure what had happened. Maybe Wesley lost his balance, fell in, and succumbed to hypothermia in just minutes before sinking. Maybe a sudden current pulled him under, even though the weather had been calm. Some seasoned park officials quietly said among themselves, if he wasn't wearing a life jacket, and he went down in one of the deep zones, we may never find him. Wesley's family refused to accept that. They hired private search teams. They reached out to groups using sonar and underwater robots. Most declined. The cost is too high, the lake's too deep, and the chances of survival after this long are nearly zero. Still, they kept searching. Week after week, from June to July, then into August. As time went on, the media attention faded. Reporters left. Social media posts slowed down, and Wesley still hadn't come home. Some began to wonder, was his friend telling the whole truth? But the man had fully cooperated. He spoke with police, answered every question. There were no red flags, no motive. Maybe it was just an accident. But why was it so clean, so silent? Nothing left, except a kayak, a calm lake, and a waiting that wouldn't end. As winter arrived, snow began to fall across the lake. The search teams stood down. The police closed the case as an unresolved disappearance. Wesley's family lit candles at the shoreline. They had no body, no funeral, only a quiet message. If you're still out there somewhere, just know we've never stopped looking. And then a new year began. No one knew it would take until the very end of the next one for the lake to finally give back an answer. November 2024, nearly 6 months had passed since Wesley Dopkins disappeared. To the media, the story had faded. But for his family, his ex-wife, his sister, his closest friends, the wound was still there, quiet, unhealed. Local police officially suspended the active investigation. They said it plainly. No new evidence, no witnesses, and no body. The case remains open, but the search is paused. It was a heartbreaking moment. Not because there were no answers, but because it felt like Wesley was being forgotten. As if, the moment people stopped talking about him, he'd never existed at all. That's when the family started going back through everything. Every report, every witness statement, every search map, every early theory that had been dismissed. And one strange detail stood out. The northeast section of Jackson Lake, where Wesley's belongings had been found, had never been fully scanned with high-resolution sonar. Search crews had passed over it, but no one had ever stopped to conduct a deep survey of the lake bed. Why? Too deep, too risky. And according to the rescue team's judgment, no strong reason to believe the body would be there. But the family didn't accept that. They believed that if someone had enough technology, enough skill, and enough heart, there was still hope. They contacted multiple private dive teams. Most said no. Some quoted prices in the tens of thousands. Then, they heard about Bruce's Legacy, a nonprofit founded by two brothers dedicated to recovering drowning victims, especially in places where official efforts had already given up. Bruce's Legacy had taken part in over 300 recovery missions across the U.S. They never charged families. All they asked for was solid information and a little hope. Wesley's family sent the files. They didn't expect much. But just 2 weeks later, Bruce's Legacy replied, "We'll be in Wyoming in December. Be ready." For the first time in half a year, it felt like the lake might finally speak. December 14th, 2024. Wyoming was bitter cold. A thin layer of snow covered the ground, but Jackson Lake hadn't frozen over yet. Bruce's Legacy arrived with 2 trucks, a small sonar-equipped boat, and one mission: to bring a missing man home. They weren't government. No uniforms, no helicopters. Just 2 men, high-grade sonar, an underwater ROV, and an unshakable determination. On the first day, they lowered sonar equipment into the water, scanning the area near Moose Island, where Wesley's kayak and gear had been found. 3 hours. 4. Nothing unusual. But near the end of day 2, at a depth of nearly 130 meters, the sonar picked up a strange shadow, roughly 6 feet long, motionless, tilted slightly on its side. Faint outlines appeared on the screen, not fully clear, but enough to make everyone hold their breath. The shape looked like a person. They marked the location and sent the image to forensic analysts. The assessment, high probability it was a human body. The next day, they deployed the underwater robot, fitted with a live feed camera. And then, the image appeared in the control cabin. A man's body. Clothing matching Wesley's last known outfit. Preserved in near-freezing temperatures. Completely intact. He lay there, as if peacefully asleep. No restraints. No debris. No signs of trauma. Just a man who had drifted downward, then been cradled by the cold. Held in place like a dream caught between 2 worlds. They couldn't recover the body immediately. The depth was far too dangerous for a human dive. But they marked the exact coordinates and sent the report to National Park Police and the Teton County Coroner's Office. Within 48 hours, the discovery was confirmed. The body found at 420 feet deep was most likely Wesley Dopkins. No one cheered. No one clapped. Just silence. A stillness, as if even the lake itself was bowing its head. 7 months of waiting. A year of searching. And finally, Wesley had been found. When the Teton County Coroner's Office officially confirmed the body was Wesley Dopkins, time seemed to stop for his family. No more what-ifs. No more maybe he's still out there. No more he could have survived. For the first time in nearly 18 months, they had a truth they could hold on to. But that truth was bitterly cold. Wesley had been at the bottom of Jackson Lake all that time, so deep that no light could reach him. No equipment had ever searched that far, and no hope had been strong enough to find him, until now. His family chose not to hold a large funeral. Instead, they organized a small memorial, just close loved ones. No flowers, no long speeches, just a few photos, an old shirt of Wesley's, and a candle placed gently beside his picture. "At least now we know where he is," his sister said, "but that doesn't make the pain any less." Police concluded the cause of death was drowning under undetermined circumstances. There were no signs of foul play, no signs of impact, no major injuries. Wesley may have lost balance, fallen in, gone into cold shock, and simply never surfaced again. But one detail couldn't be ignored. He wasn't wearing a life jacket. One simple act of kindness, offering the life vest to his friend, had become the final decision of his life. And then the questions returned, this time sharper. If they had brought 2 life jackets, would Wesley still be alive? If that section of the lake had been scanned from the start, would his family have known sooner? If advanced underwater search tools, like those used by Bruce's Legacy, had been deployed back then, what would have changed? There are no certain answers. But everyone felt one thing deeply. Wesley should not have had to wait a year and a half to come home. After Wesley's simple memorial, the family hoped for a little peace. But instead came frustration. Not because someone had harmed Wesley, but because not enough had been done to protect him. For over a year, They had placed their trust in the system, in rescue teams, in law enforcement, in technology. And yet, in the end, it was a small nonprofit, 2 people, and a boat who finally brought Wesley back. His family began asking questions that no one could or would fully answer. Why didn't anyone scan the waters near Moose Island right away when all his belongings were found there? Why did they stop searching after just 2 weeks, knowing how deep and treacherous that part of the lake was? Why weren't high-tech search tools like Bruce's legacy used from the beginning? The only answer they ever received from official channels was cost, and the probability of survival was too low. A technically correct answer, but one as cold as the bottom of Jackson Lake. Maybe no one did anything wrong. No one meant harm. But sometimes, it's the quiet indifference of a system that allows someone to vanish completely. Wesley wasn't famous. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't a public figure. He was just a quiet, middle-aged black man who loved kayaking and disappeared just as quietly. And in a society overwhelmed by headlines and breaking news, someone like Wesley could easily be forgotten, lost in the noise. His family isn't asking for compensation. They're not filing lawsuits. They just hope that Wesley's case becomes a reminder for every future disappearance. Never underestimate the importance of a single detail, whether it's a life jacket or an unscanned sonar coordinate. And if someone has to wait a whole year to be brought home, let it be because the system did everything it could, not because they were lucky enough to be found. Wesley Dopkins has come home, but not as the soft-spoken man with wet shoes after a long paddle, not as the friend who always gave you the better meal, not as the uncle who never missed a birthday, always on time, always smiling. He came home as a body pulled from 430 feet below, wrapped in a sealed bag, placed in a cold transport van, and returned in silence to the city where he once lived. For his family, this isn't closure. It's the final dash, the one that lets them begin the lifelong journey of living on with a space that can never be filled. They still keep a framed photo of him on the table. Next to it, a small note card reads, "We never stopped searching and never stopped remembering." And Jackson Lake? It's still there, silent, beautiful, and indifferent, like a landscape painting hiding stories no one tells out loud. Wesley wasn't the first to go missing there, and he likely won't be the last. But his story leaves something behind, meaning, a reminder that caution is never too much, that a single life jacket can mean the difference between life and death, that even the most beautiful waters can hide depths darker than we're ready to face, and that sometimes the ones who don't make headlines, who have no hashtag, no trending moment, are the very ones we must remember most. Wesley Dopkins is not a case file. He was a person, a story, a lesson. And if you're watching this video right now, maybe you're the last person still remembering him, the last one still asking, what really happened that day? If you've stayed with us, if you've listened all the way to this final moment, maybe you feel what we feel. There's no such thing as a complete ending. No explanation will ever be enough. And not everyone who disappears gets to come home. Wesley did, but how many others still haven't? They might not have news coverage, no volunteer search teams, no reopened files, no one left to remember them. But maybe, just maybe, you'll be the one to keep them alive, in the simplest way possible by not forgetting. What do you think really happened to Wesley that day? If you've ever lost someone, if you've ever lived with a question that never got answered, if you've ever had to carry silence where there should have been closure, leave a quiet mark. Comment, "Me too." We can't change the past, but we can keep the memory alive, because every name, like Wesley Dopkins, deserves to be remembered.